The words exploded across the pristine showroom floor like a gunshot. Get your dirty black hands off that car. Sergeant Derek Harlan stormed toward the entrance, his face twisted with rage the moment Maya stepped out beside the sleek pastel pink Porsche 911 Turbo S Cabriolet. The key fob trembled slightly in her hand. You think we're all fools in here, he barked. You seriously expect anyone to believe this car belongs to you? Maya Williams stood beside the luxurious vehicle, her posture steady even as her fingers shook. Officer, I already completed the purchase, she replied, voice calm but firm. The dealership confirmed my payment yesterday. Your accusation is completely wrong. Harlan jabbed a finger toward her face. Don't stand there feeding me some polished little story. Girls like you don't buy cars like this, and everybody in this room knows it. A heavy silence fell over the showroom. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks as dozens of strangers turned to stare, their eyes filled with open doubt and quiet contempt. Tyler Grant stepped beside the reception desk, arms folded with a confident smirk. That's what I told you, Sergeant. Something felt off the second she walked in here asking for a Porsche, like she owned the place. Maya turned to him, disbelief flickering across her face. Tyler, you personally verified my wire transfer. You congratulated me yesterday. Tyler shrugged with practiced concern. I said the payment came through. I didn't say the money was clean. Harlan laughed coldly. There it is. Dirty money always hides behind paperwork. So tell me, Maya Williams, where did the cash come from? Some rapper? Some athlete? Or did somebody hand you a stolen identity and tell you to play rich for an afternoon? Maya's fingers tightened around the keys. I own a software company. I don't need anyone to hand me anything. Several customers exchanged amused looks. Harlan fed off their doubt. A software company, he repeated mockingly. That's convenient. Everybody's a CEO these days. A man near the coffee station chuckled under his breath. Maya's chest tightened. She hated this feeling. Not fear, but the crushing weight of exposure, as if the entire room had already decided who she was before she spoke a single word. Harlan stepped closer until she could smell stale coffee on his breath. You people always think a few documents and a nice coat make you untouchable, but dirty money leaves traces. Maya kept her voice low and steady. You're not investigating anything. You walked in here with your mind already made up. Then why are you shaking? Harlan asked, his tone sharpening as if her nerves proved guilt. Maya looked down. Her hand was trembling, not from guilt, but because humiliation carried weight, and right now it pressed down on her chest like concrete. I'm shaking because you're shouting at me in front of strangers and pretending that makes you right. Harlan thrust out his hand. Hand me the keys before you make this worse. Maya drew the key fob closer to her chest. I'm not giving you the keys to a vehicle I legally own unless you show me a warrant or explain exactly what crime you believe I committed. His expression darkened. You don't get to lecture me on procedure. This car is now tied to a financial investigation, and as of this moment, you and everything connected to it are part of that investigation. Maya blinked, absorbing the sudden shift. A financial investigation. You accused me of stealing the car moments ago. Now it's money laundering. Which story are you trying to make fit? Harlan leaned in. The only story that matters is the one where I tell you to step away and you obey. It becomes my business, Maya said, voice steadier now. When you accuse me of crimes in public without evidence. Harlan suddenly turned toward the espresso bar near the waiting lounge. Without asking, he snatched a fresh ceramic cup from the counter. Hot espresso steamed near the rim. The young employee behind the machine looked startled. Sir, that's... Harlan cut him off with a raised hand and turned back toward Mayo. You know what your real problem is. People like you forget your place, then act surprised when someone reminds you. Before Maya could answer, Harlan moved his arm suddenly. The espresso splashed straight across the front of her cream-colored designer coat. Scalding liquid soaked through the fabric instantly. Maya gasped sharply, stumbling backward as dark coffee spread across her chest and sleeves. Someone laughed near the waiting area. Then another person joined in. Harlan lifted both hands with a cruel little smirk. Oops, guess I slipped. Tyler shook his head with a grin. That Coke probably cost more than her rent. More laughter followed. Maya stood frozen beside the Porsche, while coffee dripped slowly from the edge of her sleeve onto the marble floor. The humiliation hit harder than the heat. An older man near the waiting chairs grabbed a handful of used cocktail napkins from a small table and tossed them toward her feet. Well, somebody help her clean up, he muttered loudly enough for others to hear. She looks more like a homeless girl than a Porsche owner anyway. Another woman tossed a crumpled tissue toward Maya's shoes. Then another followed. Harlan pointed toward her jewelry. Take off the watch and the necklace. Earrings, too. If this money is dirty, everything on you is evidence. Maya stared at him. You cannot seriously believe my jewelry proves anything. I don't need your opinion, Harlan said, stepping in before she could move. I need the evidence secured. He grabbed her wrist roughly. The Rolex snapped off violently into his hand. Maya's voice broke despite her effort to control it. That was my father's watch. It has nothing to do with this car. Harlan dropped it into his palm like it was already property of the state. Asset seizure. Then he reached for the gold chain at her neck. Maya pulled back, telling him to stop touching her, but Harlan yanked before she could protect it. The delicate clasp snapped instantly. He reached next for her pearl earrings. Maya stepped away with one hand raised. Don't, those were my mother's. Harlan ignored her warning. His fingers closed on one pearl stud, and pain shot through her head as he pulled the hard. Maya cried out softly. A thin stream of blood slid from her torn earlobe down the side of her neck. The laughter around the showroom finally faded. Even Tyler looked uneasy now. Maya pressed trembling fingers against the blood while staring directly at Harlan. You're scared of something, she said quietly. You're not trying to stop a crime. You're trying to keep me away from that car. For the first time since entering the showroom, real panic flashed across his face. Then Maya's phone vibrated inside her coat pocket. The screen lit up with one name, Evelyn Shaw. Harlan saw it instantly. Whatever fear he had been trying to hide twisted into anger again. That's enough, he snapped. You're under arrest. The entire showroom gasped. Maya stared at him in disbelief. Under arrest for what? For obstruction, resisting an active financial investigation, and possession of suspected criminal assets. That's insane, Maya said, taking one step backward. You don't even have evidence. Harlan grabbed her arm before she could move again. Save it for downtown. Let go of me. Several customers stepped farther back as Harlan twisted her arm behind her. Maya winced as the cold steel handcuffs snapped tightly around her wrists. The sound echoed through the silent showroom. Humiliation crashed through her harder than anything else that had happened so far. Coffee stained her coat. Blood still traced slowly down her neck. Used napkins lay scattered around her feet, while strangers stared at her like she belonged in the back of a patrol car. Tyler tried to hide the nervousness creeping into his face. Sergeant, maybe we should wait until... No. Harlan snapped sharply, never taking his eyes off Mayo. We are done waiting. That answer confirmed it for Maya. He wasn't arresting her because he believed she was guilty. He was arresting her because he was running out of time. Harlan pulled her toward him, keeping one hand tight on her arm while his eyes drifted once more toward the rear side of the Porsche. The fear there was unmistakable now. Whatever was hidden inside that car mattered more to him than his badge. Maya forced herself to breathe slowly despite the pain cutting into her wrists. Then her phone vibrated again inside her coat pocket. Evelyn Shaw. Harlan saw the glowing screen. Immediately, "Don't answer that phone," he warned. Maya slowly lifted her eyes toward him while blood traced a thin red line along her neck. "Before this becomes federal," she said quietly, "you should think very carefully about what happens next." And suddenly, Sergeant Derek Harlan looked afraid. The cold steel cuffs cut into Maya's wrists as Sergeant Derek Harlan dragged her across the marble showroom floor. Nobody laughed anymore. The silence inside Prestige European Motors had turned heavy and uneasy, like the entire building finally understood the situation had crossed into something ugly and irreversible. Maya's cream-colored coat was stained dark with espresso. Blood from her torn earlobe continued tracing slowly along her neck before disappearing beneath the collar. Crumpled napkins still littered the floor behind her like evidence of a public humiliation nobody wanted to acknowledge. "Now walk," Harlan snapped. "I am walking," Maya replied through clenched teeth. Tyler Grant avoided looking directly at her as they passed the reception desk. Only moments earlier, he had been smiling like a man enjoying free entertainment. Now sweat glistened near his temples. And that change did not escape Maya. Neither did the fact that Harlan kept glancing toward the Porsche every few seconds, not at her, but at the rear side panel behind the passenger seat. As if the farther they moved from it, the more agitated he became. Outside the gent glass walls of the dealership, sunlight washed over the Atlanta traffic. A black Escalade rolled slowly past the entrance before disappearing into the congestion. Somewhere nearby, a helicopter hummed faintly overhead. Harlan shoved open the dealership doors hard enough to rattle the glass. Heat rushed into Maya's face instantly after the artificial chill of the showroom. A patrol car waited at the curb. Another officer stood beside it uneasily. Officer Ryan Mercer was in his early 30s, clean-cut, with the nervous eyes of a man who had not expected the day to turn this strange. He looked at Maya's bleeding ear and visibly hesitated. "Sergeant, what happened to her?" Harlan answered without slowing down. "She resisted seizure of evidence." "That's a lie," Maya said sharply. Harlan ignored her and pulled open the back door of the cruiser. "Get in." Maya stopped moving. Harlan's grip tightened on her arm. "Don't test me," he warned. She turned toward him slowly. "You still haven't explained what's actually in that car." For one brief second, his expression cracked with fear before anger covered it again. "You watched many movies," he muttered. "No," Maya replied quietly. "I think you're terrified somebody else is about to open that Porsche." Officer Mercer looked between them carefully now, and Harlan noticed the hesitation immediately. "Put her in the car," Harlan ordered. Mercer lowered his voice. "Sergeant, shouldn't we wait for financial crimes to process this? If this is federal, we need to be careful." Harlan snapped back so sharply that nearby pedestrians turned their heads. "I said, put her in the damn car." Mercer reluctantly guided Maya into the back seat. The cruiser smelled of stale coffee, vinyl, and old cigarette smoke trapped deep in the fabric. Maya leaned back carefully, wrists throbbing against the cuffs. Through the dealership windows, she could still see the pink Porsche glowing beneath the showroom lights, like a piece of candy hiding poison inside. Harlan stayed outside the vehicle, pacing beside the curb. He pulled out his phone immediately, turning his back to the cruiser before answering. But Maya could still hear broken pieces of the conversation through the cracked front window. "She showed up early," he said, his voice low and tight. After a pause, he added, "No, the car is still here. I know what's inside it." Maya's pulse slowed instead of quickening. That was the moment certainty replaced confusion. Something hidden inside the Porsche mattered enough to make a police sergeant publicly humiliate and illegally arrest an innocent woman in broad daylight. Officer Mercer climbed into the driver's seat. Clearly uncomfortable, he adjusted the mirror awkwardly before glancing back at Maya. "You need medical attention for your ear." Maya studied him for a second. Unlike Harlan, Mercer looked disturbed by everything happening. "I need my phone," she answered. "I have a right to call someone." Mercer hesitated. "Sergeant said no calls until downtown." Maya looked toward Harlan, who was still pacing near the curb. "Officer Mercer, listen to me carefully. If this car is tied to a federal financial investigation, and your sergeant removes me from this scene before the right people arrive, you may become part of whatever he is trying to bury." Mercer froze. Maya softened her voice, not because she was weak, but because she understood the man in front of her might still have a conscience. "I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking you not to help him break it." Mercer looked out through the windshield. Harlan was still turned away, speaking urgently into his phone. After a long second, Mercer reached back, took Maya's phone from the pocket of her stained coat, and held it just close enough for her to see the screen. "You get one call," he said quietly. "Make it fast." Maya's cuffed hands made it difficult, so Mercer tapped the name when she told him. Evelyn Shaw answered on the second ring. "Maya." Evelyn's voice was calm, polished, and alert. "I saw the missed call. Where are you?" Maya looked through the windshield at the pastel Porsche inside the showroom, Prestige European Motors in Buckhead. "Sergeant Derek Harlan has me handcuffed in a patrol car. He's claiming the Porsche is tied to money laundering." There was a silence on the other end, but it was not confusion. It was recognition. Evelyn's voice lowered. "Did they try to separate you from the vehicle?" "Yes." "Did Harlan mention federal jurisdiction?" "He reacted when I did." "Then listen to me," Evelyn said, every word suddenly precise. "Do not say anything else to him. Do not sign anything. Do not let them move that car out of your sight if you can help it." Maya swallowed. "Evelyn, what is in that car?" Another pause followed, shorter this time and colder. "Enough to ruin men who thought they were untouchable," Evelyn said. "I'm making calls now." The line went dead. Mercer stared at Maya in the rearview mirror, his face paler than before. Outside, Harlan ended his own conversation abruptly and looked back toward the dealership. The giant showroom windows reflected across his face while customers inside continued gathering around the Porsche. Then Tyler suddenly appeared at the front entrance. Waving frantically, Harlan cursed under his breath and stormed back inside. Maya watched through the glass as Tyler pulled him toward the showroom floor, toward the Porsche, and something was clearly happening. Officer Mercer noticed, too. "What the hell?" Inside the dealership, employees began moving quickly. One salesman locked the front entrance doors. Another started pushing customers away from the center display area. Then Maya saw two men in dark suits entering through a side hallway. They were not dealership staff and not local police. One carried a black leather credentials wallet clipped visibly to his belt. Federal agents. Harlan stopped walking the moment he saw them, and even through layers of glass and distance, Maya could see panic take over his face. One of the suited men pointed directly toward the Porsche. The second man said something short and firm. Harlan immediately shook his head too aggressively. While Tyler looked like he might faint. Maya slowly leaned forward in the back seat despite the cuffs biting into her wrists. Inside the showroom, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Employees who had laughed minutes ago now looked terrified. Customers were pulling out phones again. Someone began recording opally. Then Harlan spun around sharply and stormed back outside toward the patrol car. He moved too fast for a man still pretending everything was routine. The moment he yanked open the rear door, Maya could feel the panic coming off him stronger than the smell of coffee on her coat. "We're leaving," he snapped. Officer Mercer frowned. "Sergeant, those men inside said they're with Federal." "I know who they are. Then maybe we should wait." Asterisk. Harlan slammed the door hard enough to shake the entire vehicle. Drive. Mercer did not move for several long seconds. Nobody spoke. Then Maya quietly said the one thing Harlan clearly did not want to hear. "They found out about the car, didn't they?" Harlan turned slowly toward the back seat. His face had gone pale. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Maya realized something important. Sergeant Derek Harlan was no longer in control. Sergeant Derek Harlan stood beside the open patrol car door, staring at Maya like a man watching his own secrets rise from the grave. The confidence that had fueled his cruelty inside the showroom was gone now. Sweat darkened the collar of his uniform despite the cooling Atlanta air settling over Buckhead. "They found out about the car, didn't they?" Maya repeated quietly. Asterisk. Harlan's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "No," Maya replied, keeping her eyes fixed on him. "But you do." Officer Mercer remained frozen behind the wheel. The tension inside the cruiser had become suffocating. Through the dealership windows, silhouettes moved quickly beneath the bright showroom lights. Federal agents were now speaking with employees near the Porsche, while nervous customers filmed everything from a distance. Harlan slammed the rear door shut hard enough to rattle the glass, then leaned down toward Mercer's open window. "Drive the car," he ordered sharply. "Now." Mercer hesitated. Asterisk. Sergeant, if federal agents are involved, shouldn't we stay on scene? That wasn't a suggestion. But if they ask where the suspect went? Harlan cut him off instantly. "You let me worrying about that." Maya watched Mercer carefully. The younger officer looked trapped between fear of disobeying a superior and fear of becoming involved in something far worse. Then Harlan's radio crackled. "Unit 12, hold position at Prestige European Motors. Federal investigators requesting all responding officers remain on site." The voice coming through dispatch sounded calm. Harlan did not. His hand tightened around the radio so hard his knuckles whitened. "Negative," he replied immediately. "Transporting suspect downtown." A pause followed, before dispatch answered again. "Federal agents are specifically requesting Sergeant Harlan remain at the dealership." Maya saw it happen in real time. Panic, pure panic. Harlan turned away from the cruiser and lowered his voice, but not enough to stop Maya from hearing pieces of it. "They don't have a warrant for the vehicle yet." "No. Listen to me. If they open that panel before I get back." He stopped suddenly after realizing Mercer was watching him through the side mirror. Harlan snapped the radio off completely. That terrified Maya more than anything else so far. Good officers followed procedure. Desperate men silenced it. Inside the dealership, movement intensified. One federal agent now stood beside the Porsche, speaking directly to Adrian Lang, the silver-haired CEO of Prestige Motors, who had apparently rushed back into the showroom moments earlier. Employees clustered together, whispering nervously near the espresso bar where Maya's humiliation had started. The same customers who had laughed at her now looked frightened to even be there. Harlan opened the front passenger door and climbed into the cruiser beside Mercer. "Drive," he said again. Lower this time, but far more dangerous. Mercer swallowed hard. Where? Warehouse district south of downtown. That answer made Maya's stomach tighten. A police station would have made sense. A warehouse district did not. Even Mercer looked alarmed now. "Sergeant." "Why would we?" "Because I said so." The engine started reluctantly as the cruiser pulled away from the curb. Maya turned her head for one last look at the Porsche glowing beneath the showroom lights. Federal agents were now circling the vehicle slowly, studying it like surgeons preparing for an operation. Harlan noticed where she was looking. "You should have stayed out of this." Maya met his eyes through the metal divider. "I didn't walk into your corruption. You dragged me into it." His face hardened instantly. "You think you're smart because you built some little tech company. You have no idea how this city works. Then explain it to me." Harlan laughed bitterly and leaned back in his seat. "Atlanta runs on deals, people like you never see. Politicians, cops, developers, banks, everybody protects everybody. And Victor Salazar," that name hit him like a knife. Mercer glanced sideways immediately. Harlan turned slowly toward the back seat. "Where did you hear that name?" Maya held his stare. "You reacted too fast when federal agents showed up. Men only panic like that when they already know what's hidden." Silence filled the cruiser. Outside, Buckhead's polished storefronts slowly gave way to older buildings and darker streets as they headed south toward downtown Atlanta. Neon signs flickered above closed barber shops and liquor stores while traffic thickened around evening commuters. Finally, Harlan spoke again, but this time his voice sounded tired instead of angry. "Victor Salazar laundered money through luxury dealerships all over the Southeast," he admitted quietly. "Cars, art, real estate. Millions disappeared through shell companies before anybody noticed. And the Porsche." Harlan looked out the windshield. "That car was never supposed to be sold." Mercer tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Maya leaned forward despite the cuffs. "What's inside it?" Harlan didn't answer immediately. The city lights reflected across his face as if he were aging by the second. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen and immediately cursed under his breath before answering. "What?" Even through the muffled speaker, Maya could hear a woman shouting on the other end. Harlan's expression darkened further. "No, you listen to me. Stall them." Another burst of yelling. "I don't care what Lang wants. Do not let federal agents near that car until I get there." The line disconnected. Mercer finally spoke. "Sergeant, what exactly are we transporting her into?" Harlan slowly lowered the phone from his ear. For the first time all night, he looked less like a police officer and more like a man drowning. Then Maya's own phone vibrated again inside her coat pocket. Harlan noticed instantly. This time, instead of anger, something colder crossed his face. Fear of losing control completely? "Maya," he said quietly, "if Evelyn Shaw is involved, then this situation thus became very dangerous for everybody." Maya looked at him steadily. Double quotes "No. Sergeant, it became dangerous the moment you decided the law belonged to you." Rain began falling lightly over Atlanta just as the patrol car crossed under the old railroad bridge near downtown. Thin streaks of water slid across the windshield while neon reflections smeared across the wet pavement like bleeding paint inside the cruiser. Nobody spoke for nearly a full minute after Maya's last words. "You decided the law belonged to you." The sentence lingered in the silence like smoke. "Sergeant." Derek Harlan sat rigid in the passenger seat. one elbow pressed against the window, jaw tight enough to crack teeth. Officer Mercer kept both hands on the wheel, though Maya noticed the younger cop glancing nervously at Harlan every few seconds. Maya leaned her head carefully against the seat behind her. The pain in her torn ear had settled into a dull burn now, but the handcuffs still dug sharply into her wrists every time the cruiser hit a pothole. Her phone vibrated, again inside her coat pocket. Harlan noticed. Immediately, "Turn it off," he said without looking at her. "I can't exactly reach it." Harlan looked at Mercer. "Take the phone." Mercer hesitated. "Sergeant." That wasn't a request. Reluctantly, Mercer reached back and removed the phone from Maya's pocket. The screen glowed brightly inside the dark cruiser. Evelyn Shaw calling. Harlan stared at the name for a long second before holding out his hand. "Give it to me." Mercer didn't move. "Officer Mercer," Harlan said quietly. "Now you need to decide whose side you're on." That sentence changed the air inside the vehicle, because good cops didn't talk like that. Not during arrests, not during investigations. Mercer swallowed hard before finally handing the phone over. Harlan answered without speaking. Evelyn's voice came through sharp and immediate, even from the speaker. "If Maya is still in handcuffs when federal investigators arrive, Derek, your career won't survive the night." Harlan's eyes narrowed. "You don't intimidate me." "No," Evelyn replied calmly, "but indictments probably do." Mercer looked sharply toward Harlan. Maya watched everything silently. Harlan lowered his voice. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. I know exactly what's inside that Porsche." That hit him harder than Maya expected. Harlan actually stopped breathing for a second. Evelyn continued before he could recover. "The moment you touched Maya Williams, this stopped being cleanup and became exposure." Harlan turned slightly away from Mercer. "Federal agents don't even have authorization to search the vehicle yet." "They will," Evelyn replied. "And when they do, they're going to discover why half the Atlanta Financial Crimes Task Force suddenly stopped answering their phones today." Silence swallowed the cruiser. Rain tapped harder against the roof now. Finally, Harlan spoke again, but the confidence was gone from his voice. "You think Maya matters to these people? She was convenient. That's all." Evelyn's answer came cold enough to freeze the air. "No, Derek. She became dangerous because she survived your mistake." The call ended. Harlan slowly lowered the phone into his lap. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Mercer quietly asked the question Maya could tell had been building inside him since Buckhead. "What exactly is inside that car?" Harlan stared out at the rain-covered streets sliding past them. Downtown Atlanta loomed ahead now, glowing through the storm like a city trying to hide its own sins beneath glass towers and expensive lights. "You ever hear of Victor Salazar?" Harlan finally asked. Mercer nodded slowly. "Cartel money guy went missing years earlier." "He didn't disappear." Harlan muttered. "He made deals." Maya watched him carefully now. The anger that had fueled him earlier was cracking apart under pressure, exposing exhaustion underneath. Harlan rubbed both hands across his face before continuing. "Salazar kept records on everybody? Politicians, detectives, judges, anyone taking money, insurance policies in case somebody betrayed him, and those records are in the Porsche." Mercer asked quietly. Harlan didn't answer directly, which was answer enough. The cruiser stopped at a red light beneath an overpass covered in graffiti. Rainwater dripped steadily from the concrete above, while homeless tents lined the sidewalk nearby. Maya looked out the window and suddenly understood why Harlan was panicking so badly. If federal agents opened that hidden compartment, they wouldn't just find dirt on one corrupt cop. They would find an entire network. Her phone vibrated again in Harlan's hand. This time, his expression changed immediately when he saw the screen. Richard Lang. Harlan answered instantly. What? The voice on the other end sounded furious, even through the muffled speaker. Where the hell are you? I'm handling the suspect. You're handling a disaster. Lang snapped. Federal investigators locked down my showroom. Customers recorded everything. Do you understand what this is going to do to my company? Harlan looked genuinely stunned. You're worried about bad press right now. I'm worried because Agent Lena Voss just informed me the FBI has been tracking that Porsche for months. Mercer's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Harlan lowered his voice. Then stall them. I tried. They already requested security footage. Harlan cursed under his breath. Then, Lang said something that made the blood drain completely from Harlan's face. They know about the hidden compartment. The cruiser fell silent. Even the sound of rain suddenly felt louder. Maya watched Harlan carefully as he disconnected the call with shaking fingers. For the first time since this nightmare began, he no longer looked dangerous. He looked doomed. Outside, thunder rolled low across the Atlanta skyline while red brake lights reflected across wet streets like rivers of blood. Then Maya quietly asked the question neither man wanted to hear. If they already know about the compartment, she said, then why are you still trying to keep me away from the car? Harlan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, Maya saw something she never expected to see in him. Regret. The expression looked wrong on Sergeant Derek Harlan's face, like something human trying to survive beneath years of corruption and fear. Rain streaked down the cruiser windows while downtown Atlanta glowed around them in blurred reds and golds. Maya leaned slightly forward despite the cuffs cutting into her wrists. You knew this would happen eventually, didn't you? Harlan let out a dry laugh that carried no humor. You think men like Victor Salazar build systems without backup plans? Officer Mercer kept his eyes fixed on the road, but Maya could see him listening to every word now. Harlan stared out through the rain-covered windshield. Salazar trusted nobody. That hidden compartment wasn't just insurance. It was leverage, and you protected it, Maya said quietly. Harlan rubbed his jaw slowly. I protected myself. The honesty of the answer settled heavily inside the cruiser. Outside, traffic slowed as they entered the older warehouse district south of downtown. The polished towers of Buckhead had disappeared behind them now, replaced by rusted loading docks, abandoned brick buildings, and flickering street lights struggling against the rain. Mayo immediately noticed something else. They still were not heading toward a police station. Mercer noticed it, too. Sergeant, he said carefully, where exactly are we taking her? Harlan didn't answer immediately. He seemed distracted, lost somewhere inside calculations only he could see. Then his phone buzzed again in his hand. This time the screen displayed a blocked number. Harlan answered instantly. Talk. A rough male voice came through the speaker. You got a problem. I'm aware. No, you're not. The voice sounded older, calm in a dangerous way. Federal agents already pulled dealership security footage. They know you arrested the girl before probable cause existed. Harlan cursed quietly. The voice continued. You should have buried the car weeks ago. You think I don't know that? Then fix it. The line disconnected. Maya watched Harlan carefully now. Earlier, he had looked like a violent man abusing power. Now he looked like someone trapped inside machinery far larger than himself. Mercer finally spoke again. Who was that? Doesn't matter. With respect, Sergeant? I think it matters a lot. Harlan turned toward him slowly. You ever spend 20 years protecting a city that only remembers you when something goes wrong? Mercer frowned. What does that have to do with any of this? Harlan stared ahead. Everything. The cruiser turned down a narrow industrial street lined with shuttered warehouses and chain-link fences. Rainwater pooled along cracked pavement while old freight trains groaned somewhere nearby in the dark. Maya's stomach tightened. This is not a police station. No, Harlan admitted quietly. Mercer slowed the vehicle immediately. Sergeant Harlan finally looked directly at him. If federal agents opened that compartment tonight, dozens of careers die by morning. Judges, detectives, politicians, maybe mine, too. Then let them die, Mercer said before he could stop himself. The cruiser fell silent. Harlan almost looked surprised by the answer. Maya studied Mercer differently now. Underneath the nerves and uncertainty, there was still something solid in him. Something decent. Harlan leaned back heavily against his seat. You still think this city runs on honesty? He muttered. No, Mercer replied quietly. I just think there's a line. Rain hammered harder against the roof now. Then Maya suddenly understood something important. Harlan was stalling. Not transporting. Not arresting. Waiting for someone else to decide what happened next. Her phone vibrated again in Harlan's hand. He stared at the screen without moving. Evelyn Shaw. This time Maya spoke. First, you should answer it. Harlan laughed. Bitterly. That woman already buried half the people I know. She called because she knows you're scared. Harlan looked back at her sharply. You think Evelyn Shaw cares about you? No, Maya answered honestly. I think she cares about what happens if I disappear. That landed harder than she expected. Harlan finally answered the call. What now? Evelyn's voice remained calm, but Maya could hear steel beneath it. Federal agents just opened the hidden compartment. Harlan closed his eyes. It's over, Derek. Nobody inside the cruiser moved. Even Mercer stopped breathing for a second. Then Evelyn continued. They found financial ledgers, payment records, offshore accounts, and a list of names long enough to destroy half this county. Harlan whispered something under his breath Maya couldn't hear. But that's not the worst part, Evelyn added. Harlan slowly opened his eyes again. What else was in there? A pause followed. Then Evelyn said quietly, a recording. The word changed everything. Maya saw it immediately. Not panic this time, terror. Real terror. Harlan gripped the phone tighter. What kind of recording? Victor Salazar? Documenting payouts, meetings, conversations. Evelyn paused briefly. Including one with you, Mercer. Turned toward Harlan so fast the cruiser swerved slightly on the wet road. Harlan looked physically sick. Now. Maya suddenly understood why he had been desperate enough to publicly destroy her life. Inside that showroom, the compartment had not just contained evidence. It contained proof. Proof that could not be explained away. Proof with voices. Rain pounded the windshield while the old warehouse district blurred around them in darkness and neon reflections. Finally, Evelyn spoke again. Federal agents know Maya Williams has nothing to do with this. Which means if she stays in handcuffs another minute, they're going to start asking why. Harlan said nothing. Derek, Evelyn continued softly. You still have one chance to stop making this worse. The line disconnected. Silence filled the cruiser. Again, then Officer Mercer slowly pulled the patrol car to the side of the empty industrial street and shifted it into park. Neither man spoke for several seconds. Finally, Mercer turned toward Harlan with a face Mayo barely recognized anymore. Not nervous. resolved. "Sergeant," he said quietly, "I think you need to uncuff her." Rain hammered the roof of the patrol car while Officer Ryan Mercer kept one hand resting on the gearshift and the other gripping the steering wheel tightly enough to whiten his knuckles. "Sergeant," he repeated quietly, "I think you need to uncuff her." The words lingered in the cramped cruiser like a challenge neither man could take back now. Sergeant Derek Harlan sat motionless in the passenger seat, staring through the rain-streaked windshield at the abandoned warehouse district surrounding them. Old brick buildings loomed in the darkness like dead factories from another century. A flickering neon beer sign buzzed weakly above a boarded-up corner store across the street. Maya watched Harlan carefully. Earlier that evening he had controlled every room he entered. The showroom, the arrest, the humiliation. But now the balance had shifted and everybody inside the cruiser could feel it. Harlan finally spoke without turning around. "You don't understand how this works." "Mercer." "No," Mercer answered honestly. "I don't think I do anymore." Harlan laughed softly to himself. But there was no amusement in it. "That's because nobody explains it when you first put on the badge. They tell you about honor, service, duty. Then 20 years later, you realize the city runs on favors and fear." Mercer shook his head. Slowly, "That still doesn't explain what happened back there." Harlan finally turned toward him. "You think I woke up this morning planning to arrest an innocent woman?" Maya spoke before Mercer could answer. "No, I think you woke up terrified somebody would find what was hidden inside that Porsche." Harlan looked at her through the darkness of the cruiser dot, and for the first time since the showroom, there was no anger left in his eyes, only exhaustion. Outside, thunder rolled low across Atlanta. Mercer reached for the keys hanging beside the steering column. "Sergeant, federal agents already know she's innocent. If we keep driving around with her cuffed in the back seat, we become part of this." "We already are," Harlan muttered. Silence followed. Then Maya quietly asked the question neither officer wanted to face. "Who else is involved?" Harlan leaned back heavily against the seat. Rainwater slid down the side window beside him while distant train horns echoed through the industrial district. "You ever hear people talk about corruption like it's one bad cop taking cash in an alley somewhere?" He asked quietly. "That's television. Real corruption wears suits, eats at steak houses, donates to campaigns." Maya said nothing. Harlan rubbed both hands over his face before continuing. "Victor Salazar didn't survive because he had guns. He survived because important people needed him." Mercer frowned. "Judges." Harlan gave a slow nod. "Developers, bank executives, politicians, cops. Everybody taking a piece while pretending to hate the man in public. And now federal agents have proof." Maya said, "That recording changes everything." Harlan admitted quietly. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the cruiser hard enough to almost drown the silence inside. Then Mercer finally made his decision. He reached back toward Maya. "Turn around." Harlan looked at him sharply. "What are you doing?" "She shouldn't still be cuffed. You don't get to decide that." "No," Mercer replied steadily, "but I get to decide whether I help bury an innocent person." The statement landed heavily inside the cruiser. Maya slowly turned her wrists despite the pain cutting into them. Mercer unlocked one cuff first, then the other. The click of metal opening sounded strangely loud. For the first time in nearly an hour, blood began flowing properly back through Maya's hands. She rubbed her wrists carefully while studying Mercer. "Thank you." Mercer nodded once, uncomfortable with gratitude. Harlan stared ahead silently. "You just made yourself part of this." "No," Mercer answered. You did that when you arrested her. Without probable cause. Harlan almost smiled at that. Almost. Then his phone buzzed again. All three of them looked down instantly. Agent Lena Voss. Harlan stared at the screen for several seconds before finally answering. Voss. The woman's voice came through calm and controlled. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Derek, you already opened the compartment? Yes, Voss replied. And now I'm looking at enough evidence to dismantle 3 departments and put several elected officials under investigation. Harlan closed his eyes briefly. Voss continued. Here's the part you need to understand. Maya Williams is no longer your problem. She's now a federal witness. Maya felt the atmosphere inside the cruiser shift immediately. Witness. Not suspect. Not detainee. Witness. Harlan lowered his voice. You're moving too fast. No, Voss corrected him. You're finally running out of time. Outside, headlights suddenly appeared at the far end of the industrial street. Black SUVs. 3 of them, moving slowly through the rain. Mercer saw them first. Sergeant Harlan didn't need the warning. He already knew. Federal agents. The SUVs rolled closer before stopping 20 yards ahead of the patrol car. Their headlights washed across wet pavement and broken warehouse windows. Nobody inside the cruiser moved. Then Voss's voice returned through the phone. Step out of the vehicle. Derek. Harlan stared through the windshield at the waiting SUVs. You tracked my cruiser. We tracked the phone you confiscated from Maya. That almost made him smile despite everything. Harlan lowered the phone slowly into his lap. You know what the worst part is, he said quietly. Nobody answered. He looked toward Maya. Through the darkness. I really did think humiliating you would buy me enough time to fix this. Maya held his gaze steadily. People like you always think someone weaker should pay for your mistakes. That hit harder than shouting ever could have. Outside, SUV doors began opening one by one beneath the rain. Then Mercer quietly reached for the door handle. Sergeant, he said carefully, whatever happens next, don't make it worse. Rain poured harder as the doors of the black SUVs swung open one after another. Federal agents stepped out into the wet Atlanta night wearing dark jackets marked FBI and Financial Crimes Task Force. Their movements were calm, organized, and deliberate, which somehow made the situation feel even more dangerous. Inside the patrol car, nobody moved. Sergeant Derek Harlan sat frozen in the passenger seat, staring through the windshield, as if he still believed there might be some path left to escape everything collapsing around him. Officer Mercer slowly opened his door first. Cold rain and city noise rushed into the cruiser immediately. Maya watched Mercer step out with both hands visible, careful and respectful, like a man trying to separate himself from a disaster before it swallowed him too. One of the federal agents approached carefully through the rain. Mid-40s, dark coat, sharp posture, calm eyes that missed nothing. Agent Lena Voss. She stopped beside Mercer. Officer, is Maya Williams still inside the vehicle? Mercer nodded once. Yes, ma'am. She's uncuffed. Voss's expression softened slightly at that. Good. Harlan finally stepped out of the cruiser. Rainwater instantly soaked the shoulders of his uniform while headlights from the SUVs reflected across the wet pavement around him. Voss turned toward him slowly. Derek. Harlan. Harlan gave a tired laugh. You always did enjoy dramatic entrances. I enjoy honesty more. Voss replied. The agents behind her spread quietly across the street, securing the area. while another black SUV pulled up farther behind them. Maya noticed men in suits inside, speaking urgently into phones. This was bigger than one arrest now, much bigger. Harlan looked toward Voss. You already opened the compartment. What else do you want? We want the truth. Voss answered calmly. That's usually the part people like you have trouble with. The words landed hard. Harlan looked away toward the dark warehouse buildings lining the street. You think this city gets cleaner after tonight? Another guy takes my place tomorrow. Maybe, Voss admitted. But tonight, the machine loses one more piece. Maya slowly stepped out of the cruiser, rubbing her sore wrists carefully. The rain hit her stained coat immediately, washing diluted streams of espresso down the fabric. Voss saw the blood near Maya's ear, and her expression changed instantly. Who did that to you? Before Maya could answer, Mercer spoke quietly. Sergeant Harlan removed her jewelry during the arrest. Voss looked at Harlan for a long moment. You ripped an earring out of her ear. Harlan said nothing. That woman was never your suspect. Voss continued coldly. She was your distraction. Maya stood silently beneath the rain while agents moved around her. For the first time since entering Prestige Motors, nobody was looking at her like a criminal anymore. Now they looked at her like evidence, like survival. One of the agents approached Voss holding a tablet. Mum, DC wants immediate transport on the financial records. Voss nodded. And the audio file. The agent hesitated briefly. Verified. Authentic. Harlan lowered his head slightly. Maya noticed that reaction mattered more than anything else. The recording was real. Voss looked back toward Harlan. You should have come in when Salazar disappeared years earlier. We could have protected you. Harlan almost smiled through the rain. Nobody protects cops after they stop being useful. That's not entirely true. No. Harlan looked directly at her now. Tell me how many people in those files are already making calls tonight trying to save themselves. Voss didn't answer because they both knew the truth. Phones were ringing all across Atlanta right now. Judges, council members, business owners, police captains, people with perfect reputations suddenly staring at the possibility of prison. Maya folded her arms against the cold. What exactly was on the recording? Harlan closed his eyes briefly. Voss answered instead. Victor Salas are documenting payments to public officials, dates, names, conversations. She paused. Including agreements involving seized evidence disappearing from investigations. Maya looked toward Harlan and the Porsche. Harlan finally spoke again, but his voice sounded older somehow. Salazar trusted the car because nobody paid attention to beauty. People see something expensive and they stop asking questions. The sentence settled heavily between them. Maya thought about the showroom again. The laughter, the napkins thrown at her feet, the way strangers decided she could never belong beside something beautiful unless she stole it. All because of appearances. One of the agents approached Voss quickly. Ma'am, local news already picked up footage from the dealership. Harlan let out another tired laugh. That was fast. The agent continued. Videos of the arrest are everywhere online. Now, Maya felt something tighten inside her chest. Not fear this time. Exposure. Millions of strangers were probably already watching her humiliation on their phones. Voss noticed the expression on Maya's face. We'll handle media. No, Maya said quietly. You won't. Everyone looked at her. Maya stared out toward the rain-covered street while distant. Thunder rolled over the city. People watched what happened to me tonight and laughed because they thought I didn't belong there. If this disappears quietly, nothing changes. Harlan looked at her carefully then. For the first time, there was something close to respect in his eyes. Voss stepped closer to Maya. What are you saying? Maya slowly lifted her gaze. I'm saying I want every video released, every report, every name connected to this. Her voice hardened slightly. Nobody gets to bury this under legal paperwork. Silence followed. Then Harlan shook his head faintly. You really don't understand what kind of people are involved. No, Maya replied calmly, but I understand exactly what happens when everyone stays afraid of them. Rainwater dripped steadily from the edge of the patrol car between them. Then, Voss finally nodded once. All right, she said quietly. Then let's stop hiding things. Rain continued pouring over the warehouse district while federal agents moved with quiet urgency around the street. Red and blue reflections from unmarked vehicles shimmered across puddles and broken pavement. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again over Atlanta like the city itself was holding its breath. Maya stood beside the patrol car with soaked hair clinging lightly against her face and blood still dried near the edge of her neck. Her wrists burned where the cuffs had dug into them, but for the first time all night, she no longer felt powerless. Agent Lena Voss turned toward one of her men. Get Miss Williams medical attention and bring her to the federal field office. I'm not going anywhere yet, Maya said immediately. Voss studied her carefully. You've already done more than enough tonight. No, Maya replied quietly. I survived tonight. That's different. Sergeant Derek Harlan leaned against the hood of the patrol car a few feet away, rainwater dripping from the edge of his uniform sleeves. He looked exhausted now, stripped of the authority that had once filled every movement he made. One of the younger agents approached Voss holding a phone. Ma'am, local stations are running footage from the dealership arrest nonstop. The agent turned the screen slightly. Maya saw herself there instantly, handcuffed, coffee soaking her coat, Harlan shoving her toward the cruiser, while strangers recorded and laughed in the background. The footage looked worse from the outside, crueler. Voss glanced at Maya carefully. We can suppress some of this until the investigation stabilizes. No, Maya said again. Harlan looked up at her from the hood of the car. Maya slowly shook her head. People need to see it exactly the way it happened. One of the agents frowned. Miss Williams, social media already turned this into a political war. Half the city thinks you're innocent. The other half thinks this proves luxury crime is out of control. Maya gave a bitter smile. Funny how nobody questioned luxury crime until a black woman touched the steering wheel. Nobody answered that, because nobody could. A black SUV door opened nearby and Adrian Lang stepped out, holding an umbrella over his head. Even in the rain and chaos, the CEO of Prestige Motors still looked polished in his dark tailored coat and silver tie, but his face looked 10 years older than it had inside the showroom. The moment he saw Maya standing free beside federal agents, relief crossed his expression so visibly it almost looked painful. Miss Williams, he said carefully as he approached, I owe you an apology far beyond anything a lawyer could draft. Maya looked at him steadily. You stood there while your customers laughed at me. Lang lowered his eyes briefly, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Harlan gave a tired scoff from beside the cruiser. Regret comes easy once cameras show up. Voss shot him a sharp look, but Lang surprised everyone by nodding slowly. He's right, Lang admitted. I saw the situation spiraling, and I chose the reputation of my dealership over doing the right thing. He looked back toward Maya. That failure belongs to Emmy. The honesty in his voice shifted something. Slightly in the air. Maya folded her arms against the cold rain. Then, why did your dealership still sell the Porsche if federal agents had been tracking it for months? Lang hesitated. That hesitation answered more than words. Voss stepped in calmly. Prestige Motors cooperated partially with the investigation, but certain records connected to Salazar disappeared before we could subpoena them. Harlan laughed quietly too. Himself. Nothing disappears in this city without permission. One of the agents approached Voss. Again. Mum, DC just confirmed. Warrants are being prepared for 6 additional names from the ledger. Harlan closed his eyes briefly. Maya noticed. You knew all of them, didn't you? She asked softly. Harlan looked toward the rain-covered street. Some. His voice sounded hollow now. Enough to understand how deep this goes. Officer Mercer finally stepped closer from beside the cruiser. He had stayed mostly silent since the federal agents arrived, but now his face looked pale beneath the flashing lights. What happens now? He asked Voss quietly. Voss answered without emotion. Tonight. Interviews. Seizures. Emergency warrants. She glanced toward Harlan. By dawn, this becomes national. The words settled heavily over everyone standing in the rain. National. Not local scandal. Not one bad arrest. A national corruption investigation tied to law enforcement, politicians, and organized financial crime. Maya suddenly felt tired in a way deeper than physical exhaustion. Just hours earlier, she had driven to Prestige Motors thinking about leather interiors and Atlanta traffic. Now, federal agents surrounded her while news helicopters circled somewhere above the city. Her phone buzzed in Voss's hand. Evelyn Shaw again. This time, Voss handed it directly to Maya. Maya answered quietly. Evelyn, I just got off a call with Washington. Evelyn said. You need to understand something very clearly. The recording inside that compartment names people with enough influence to destroy careers overnight. I figured that part out. No, Evelyn corrected softly. I don't think you have. Maya turned slightly away from the others while rainwater slid down the side of her face. Then explain it. Evelyn's voice lowered. The Porsche wasn't just carrying evidence. Salazar intended it to become a dead man's, which, Maya frowned, meaning if he ever disappeared. The people protecting him were supposed to panic. Evelyn paused briefly. And tonight they are. Maya looked across the wet street toward Harlan. He stood completely still beside the patrol car, surrounded by federal agents, looking less like a corrupt cop now and more like a man finally realizing the system he trusted would never protect him in return. Then Evelyn asked the question Maya had not allowed herself to think about yet. Are you ready for what happens when the whole country knows your name by morning? Maya looked down at the coffee stains still darkening her ruined coat. Then she remembered the laughter inside the showroom, the napkins at her feet, the hands ripping jewelry from her body while strangers watched. Slowly, she lifted her eyes toward the Atlanta skyline glowing through the storm. They already decided who I was once tonight, she said quietly. I'm not afraid to let them watch me prove them wrong. By the time the convoy reached the federal field office near downtown Atlanta, the storm had swallowed the city completely. Rain hammered against the black SUVs as agents escorted Maya through a secured underground entrance beneath the building. The fluorescent lights inside the garage flickered faintly against wet concrete while armed federal officers moved quickly between elevators and security checkpoints. Everything smelled like rain, coffee, and tension. Maya walked beside Agent Lena Voss in silence. Her stained coat dripped tightly around her shoulders. People stared as they passed. Not because she looked dangerous, but because half the building already knew who she was. The woman from the dealership, the viral video, the arrest, the witness. By now, millions of people across the country had probably already seen her shoved into a patrol car while strangers laughed at her humiliation. The thought should have broken her. Instead, it made her strangely calm. Voss led her into a private conference room on the 7th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook downtown Atlanta, glowing beneath sheets of rain and flashing emergency lights. The television, mounted on the wall, was already playing local news coverage. Maya froze when she saw herself on the screen. The footage from Prestige Motors looked even uglier under broadcast lighting. Harlan screaming in her face, coffee splashing across her coat, customers laughing. The moment her ear began bleeding while someone in the background whispered, "Jesus Christ," the station had slowed the footage during the arrest. Handcuffs closing around her wrists, Harlan dragging her toward the cruiser. A headline crawled beneath the screen. Atlanta Police Sergeant linked to massive federal corruption investigation. Maya stared silently. Voss picked up the remote and muted the television. "You don't need to watch that." "Yes," Maya replied quietly. "I do." Voss studied her for a moment before sitting across from her at the long conference table. "Most people would be in shock right now. I think I passed shock somewhere around the moment strangers started throwing napkins at me." That answer seemed to hit Voss harder than expected. An agent entered, carrying a medical kit and fresh clothes. "Miss Williams, we should clean the cut on your ear." Maya nodded faintly. As the medic worked carefully near her ear, Voss opened a thick folder spread with photographs, transcripts, and financial charts. Maya immediately recognized the pink Porsche and several evidence photos. Then she noticed something else. Pictures of politicians, judges, police commanders, corporate executives, all connected by highlighted payment trails. "How many people are involved?" Maya asked quietly. Voss leaned back slowly. "Enough that Washington created a private task force years earlier." "And Harlan?" Voss hesitated before answering. "Derek Harlan started clean. At least we think he did." The medic paused briefly while cleaning dried blood near Maya's neck. Voss continued. "Salazar targeted men with pressure points, debt, divorce, gambling, sick family members. Once they took money the first time, they belonged to him." Maya looked toward the rain-covered windows. "And now those same people are going to destroy each other trying to survive. That already started." Voss slid a document across the table. Maya read the names slowly. 3 judges, to city council members, 4 officers, a deputy commissioner, all flagged for emergency investigation within the last hour. Maya exhaled softly. "This city's about to explode." Voss's phone buzzed. Immediately after the words left Maya's mouth, the agent glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's Washington," she answered quietly, listening without interruption while her expression slowly hardened. "What happened?" Maya asked once Voss ended the call. Voss placed the phone down carefully. "Somebody leaked the recording." Maya's stomach tightened. "The full recording?" "No," Voss answered. "Part of it." The television suddenly flashed, breaking news across the muted screen. Voss grabbed the remote and turned the volume back on. A news anchor appeared instantly. "Tonight, explosive new audio allegedly connected to the federal corruption investigation rocking Atlanta has now surfaced online." In the recording, a voice identified by anonymous sources as Sergeant Derek Harlan appears discussing illegal evidence seizures connected to organized financial operations. Harlan's Voice filled the room seconds later. Calm, cold, unmistakable. Move the vehicle before Federal gets near it. I don't care what paperwork disappears with it. Maya felt the room shift around her. The recording made everything real in a different way. Not rumor, not accusation. Proof. The anchor continued speaking while footage from Prestige Motors were played behind her. Public outrage intensified tonight after viral video showed Maya Williams, a black technology entrepreneur, being forcibly arrested during what federal officials now confirm was a deeply compromised investigation. Technology, entrepreneur, that was new. Earlier, headlines had called her suspected fraud suspect. Now the narrative was changing fast. Voss muted the television. Again, Harlan is finished. The agent near the door muttered quietly. No, Voss corrected him. Harlan was finished the moment the compartment opened. Now everybody connected to him is panicking, as if summoned by the sentence itself. Alarms suddenly beeped somewhere out in the hallway. Another agent rushed into the room. Agent Voss, we just got word someone attempted unauthorized access to the evidence server. Voss stood. Immediately, from inside the building, the agent nodded grimly. Whoever this network is, they're trying to erase files already. Maya slowly looked back, toward the muted television screen where her own face still stared back at her from the dealership footage. Then, she realized something terrifying. This was no longer just about exposing corruption. Now it was about surviving the people desperate enough to destroy evidence before dawn. Voss seemed to reach the same conclusion at the exact same moment. She turned toward two armed agents near the door. Nobody leaves Miss Williams alone. Not for 1 second. The seriousness in her voice chilled the room instantly. Then, Maya quietly asked the question sitting underneath everybody's fear. If they're trying this hard to erase evidence, she said, what happens when they realize I can identify Harlan? The question hung heavily inside the conference room. If they're trying this hard to erase evidence, what happens when they realize I can identify Harlan? Nobody answered immediately. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, rain streaked down the Atlanta skyline while flashing lights from police vehicles and media vans reflected across the wet streets below. Somewhere deeper inside the federal building, hurried footsteps and distant voices echoed through the halls. Agent Lena. Voss finally looked at Maya. That's exactly why you're no longer leaving this floor without protection. The seriousness in her voice settled over the room instantly. One of the armed agents near the door stepped closer. Mum, Cyber Division says the server breach attempt came from inside a secured federal network. Voss's expression darkened. Internal access. Yes. Maya felt a chill crawl through her chest. If somebody inside the system was already trying to erase files, then the corruption network was even more desperate than she imagined. Voss grabbed her phone immediately. Lock every copy of the salas are recording offline. Physical backups only. The agent nodded and hurried out. Maya looked back toward the muted television where news anchors continued replaying footage from Prestige Motors. Every few seconds, the screen showed Harlan shoving her toward the patrol car while coffee stains spread across her coat. Millions of people were watching this unfold in real time now. Voss followed Maya's gaze. You should prepare yourself. By morning, your name will be everywhere. Maya gave a tired smile. It already is. Before Voss could answer, another knock sounded at the door. Adrian Lang stepped inside carrying a dry coat, folded over one arm and a small paper bag from a nearby pharmacy. The room immediately TENSED. One of the agents moved slightly between Lang and Maya until Voss nodded. Permission. Lang looked exhausted. His silver hair was damp from the rain, and the polished confidence of the luxury dealership CEO had vanished completely. I brought antiseptic and clean bandages, he said quietly. Holding up the pharmacy bag for her ear. Maya looked at him for a long second before answering. You didn't have to do that. Yes, Lang replied softly. I did. Voss remained standing. Mr. Lang, this is still an active federal investigation. I understand. Lang glanced briefly toward the television footage of Maya's arrest playing silently in the background. That's why I came. Nobody spoke. Finally, Lang turned fully toward Maya. I watched that footage replay 6 times on the drive over. Here, Maya crossed her arms carefully, and every time it got worse. The honesty in his voice made the room quiet. Again. Lang slowly placed the pharmacy bag on the table. Prestige. Motors spent 40 years selling an image of class and exclusivity. He looked down briefly before meeting Maya's eyes again. Tonight, I realized we never learned the difference between luxury and dignity. Maya said nothing because part of her still remembered him standing silently in the showroom while strangers laughed at her. Lang seemed to understand that. I should have stopped it, he admitted. The second Harlan started screaming at you. Voss watched him carefully. Instead, you let it continue. Yes, no excuse, no corporate language, just guilt. Before anyone could speak again, alarms suddenly chirped from several agents' phones at once. Voss checked hers immediately. Then her face hardened. What happened? Maya asked. Voss looked up slowly. Sergeant Harlan is gone. The room froze. What do you mean gone? Lang asked sharply. He was placed in temporary holding downstairs while transport paperwork was being prepared. Voss's jaw tightened. Now, he's missing. Every instinct inside Maya tightened instantly. He didn't run alone, she said quietly. Voss looked at her sharply. Maya continued. A man that's scared doesn't escape without help. One of the agents rushed back into the room. Garage. Security footage shows an unmarked city vehicle leaving the underground exit 4 minutes ago. Voss grabbed her coat immediately. Get every available unit moving. The agent hesitated. There's more. Voss stopped. The recording leaked wider online. He turned the tablet screen toward them. A national news broadcast filled the display. This time, the leaked audio played much longer. Victor Salazar's voice came through first, smooth and calm. Everybody eats as long as everybody stays loyal. Then Harlan's voice answered clearly. And if somebody talks. Salazar laughed softly through the speaker. Then they disappeared before breakfast. The room went dead silent. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Not because of the threat. Because Harlan suddenly made sense. The panic, the desperation, the humiliation inside the showroom. He had not only been protecting evidence, he had been trying to survive. Men far more dangerous than himself. Lang looked physically sick now. Jesus Christ. Voss muted the tablet. Slowly, that recording just changed this from corruption to conspiracy. Maya looked toward the rain-covered windows. Again, somewhere out there in the storm, Harlan was running, or being hunted. Maybe both. Her phone buzzed softly on the table. Evelyn Shaw. Maya answered immediately. Evelyn, you need to listen carefully, Evelyn said without greeting. The leak forced people into panic mode faster than expected. Maya frowned. What does that mean? It means some of the names on those recordings are already trying to erase liabilities. Evelyn paused briefly. And right now, Maya, you are one of those liabilities. The sentence chilled the entire room. Voss stepped closer instantly, removing her to a secure location. No, Evelyn replied through the speaker. You're too late for that. Before Voss could respond, lights throughout the conference room suddenly flickered once, then twice, then the entire floor went dark. Darkness swallowed the conference room instantly. The television screen died mid-broadcast. The city lights beyond the windows vanished floor by floor, across the federal building until downtown. Atlanta became nothing but blurred storm clouds and distant emergency lights outside. For one sharp second, nobody moved. Then every agent in the room reached for a weapon at the same time. Backup generators should have kicked in already. One of them muttered. Agent Lena. Voss pulled a flashlight from her coat immediately. Lock the doors. Another agent rushed toward the entrance just as emergency red lights flickered dimly along the hallway. Outside, the weak crimson glow painted the room in shadows and made everyone look slightly unreal. Maya's pulse hammered against her ribs. Evelyn's voice still echoed through the dead phone line in her head. You're too late for that. Voss turned toward Maya. Stay behind me. Before Maya could answer, a loud metallic slam echoed somewhere down the hallway outside, followed by shouting, then gunfire. Not close, but inside the building. Lang went pale instantly. Jesus, one of the agents, pressed a finger against his earpiece. We lost communication. With lower security levels, another burst of shouting echoed through the corridor. Maya felt the atmosphere inside the room transform, completely. Up until now, everything had still felt like investigation and procedure. Suddenly, it felt like survival. Voss moved quickly toward the conference table and grabbed several evidence folders. If this breach is connected to the leak, then somebody's trying to destroy records before federal lockdown finishes, or recover them, Maya said quietly. Voss looked at her sharply. Maya swallowed carefully. You said the recordings named powerful people. If they think copies still exist inside this building. Nobody needed the rest of the sentence. Another loud bang echoed somewhere below them. Closer this time. The younger agent near the door turned pale. Mum, we need to move. Voss nodded immediately. Safe elevators offline. Completely dead. Then stairwells. Lang looked stunned. You're evacuating us through an active breach. Voss grabbed a flashlight from the table and handed it to Mayo. I'm keeping the witness alive. Everything else comes second. Outside the conference room, the 7th-floor hallway glowed under weak emergency lighting. Agents moved fast and low, weapons drawn, while alarms pulsed faintly through the building. Maya walked beside Voss, trying to ignore the throbbing pain in her wrists and ear. Then she noticed something strange. The federal agents weren't acting confused anymore. They were acting prepared. Voss caught Maya studying her. This isn't the first time evidence panic turned ugly. What does that mean? It means corruption fights hardest when exposure becomes unavoidable. Another distant gunshot cracked somewhere below. Lang flinched visibly. Who the hell attacks a federal building? Voss answered without slowing down. People who already know prison is waiting. They reached the stairwell door at the far end of the corridor. One agent pushed it open carefully, while another swept the dark stairwell below with a flashlight. Clear for now. The group started descending quickly. Emergency. Lights cast long shadows against concrete walls while rain hammered faintly against the outside structure somewhere beyond the stairwell. 5 floors down. Voss's phone suddenly vibrated. No signal should have existed. Yet somehow the call came. Through. Evelyn Shaw. Voss answered immediately while continuing. Downward. Talk. Evelyn sounded calmer than anyone else in the building. 3 names from Salazar's recording just disappeared from active monitoring. Voss's face hardened. Escaped custody. No, Evelyn corrected. Protective relocation. That stopped Voss cold on the stairs. Maya saw it instantly. The federal government itself was already splitting apart over the investigation. Some people wanted exposure. Others wanted containment. Voss lowered her voice. Who authorized relocation? I can't say over the phone. Evelyn paused briefly. But if Harlan disappeared tonight, he won't stay missing for long. Maya frowned. You think they'll kill him? Evelyn's silence answered the question better than words. The stairwell suddenly shook faintly beneath their feet. Then all the emergency lights flickered again. 1. Agent cursed under his breath. Somebody's messing with internal power. Rooting. Voss ended the call immediately. Move. Faster. The group descended another floor before suddenly stopping again. Voices echoed upward from below. Male voices. Not federal. The agents raised weapons instantly. Everybody froze. The voices grew louder. Check every level. She's still inside. Maya's blood ran cold. They were talking about her. 1 of Voss's agents whispered sharply. Back up. The group retreated silently up to flights before stopping again. Lang looked like he could barely breathe. Now, how do they even know she's here? Maya answered before Voss could, because somebody inside the system told them. Nobody argued, because by now, everyone knew it was true. The corruption network had reached places far beyond local police. Voss looked toward Maya carefully. Can you walk fast? Yes. Good. Voss replied, pulling a second handgun from her coat. Because if they reach this floor before extraction arrives, tonight stops being an investigation. Another voice echoed faintly from below. Closer now. Then Maya heard something that froze her completely. Sergeant Harlan. We don't have much time, his voice shouted from somewhere beneath the stairwell. Find her before federal transport gets here. Lang stared downward in disbelief. Harlan is working with them. Maya slowly tightened her grip around the flashlight. No, she whispered, finally understanding. He's running from them. The words hit the stairwell harder than the distant gunfire. He's running from them. Agent Lena. Voss stared down into the darkness below while weak emergency lights flickered against the concrete walls. Voices continued echoing upward through the stairwell. Sharp and hurried now. Split up. She couldn't have gone far. Check every floor. Then Harlan's voice again. Rougher this time. Forget the files. Find Maya Williams first. Lang looked completely shaken. Why would they care more about her than the evidence? Maya answered quietly before Voss could, because I'm alive. The realization settled over everyone at once. The leaked footage from Prestige Motors had already spread nationwide. Millions of people had seen her face, seen Harlan arrest her, seen the humiliation inside the showroom. If Maya disappeared now, the entire investigation would instantly look poisoned. Voss motioned silently toward the upper floors. Move. The group climbed quickly back upward, footsteps echoing sharply through the concrete stairwell, while the voices below continued, searching floor by floor. Maya's lungs burned. By the time they reached the 9th floor landing, rain rattled faintly against distant windows somewhere above them, while the building's emergency alarms pulsed through the darkness. One of the agents pressed an ear carefully against the stairwell door leading into the 9th floor corridor. Quiet. For now. Voss nodded once. The door opened. Slowly, the hallway beyond looked abandoned. Under dim red emergency lighting, office doors stood, partially open while scattered papers drifted across the carpet from malfunctioning ventilation systems. The entire building felt wounded. Voss turned toward Maya. Stay between us, Maya nodded. As they moved down the corridor, Lang leaned closer to her. His voice stayed low enough not to carry. I need to tell you something before this gets worse. Maya looked at him carefully. Worse. Lang gave a grim smile. Trust me, we haven't reached worse yet. He glanced briefly toward Voss before continuing. The Porsche should never have been displayed publicly. You knew. Not everything, Lang admitted quickly, but I knew federal investigators requested delays on the sale twice. Maya frowned. Then why put it on the showroom floor? Lang's expression darkened with shame. Because someone very powerful insisted the vehicle remain visible. Voss overheard the last sentence immediately. Who? Lang hesitated. Then the hallway lights flickered again. For one terrible second, total darkness swallowed the corridor before the red emergency. Lighting returned weaker than before. Lang lowered his voice further. Atlanta Deputy Commissioner Warren Pike. Voss stopped walking instantly. Even the agents reacted. Maya recognized the name immediately. Warren Pike appeared constantly on local television beside mayors and police chiefs talking about public safety and community reform. A respected face, a trusted face. Voss's jaw tightened. Pike's name wasn't on the leaked audio. No, Lang replied softly, because Pike never spoke directly to Salazar. The implication chilled the whole way. Maya suddenly understood how corruption survived so long. The smartest people never touched dirt with bare hands. One of the agents moved quickly toward Voss. Ma'am, tactical teams lost camera access to floors 6 through 8. Voss looked toward the elevators farther down the corridor, then toward the stairwell they had just exited. They're herding us upward, she muttered. As soon as the words left her mouth, Maya heard footsteps somewhere behind them. Fast, closing distance. The agents raised weapons instantly. A shadow appeared at the far end of the hallway near the emergency exit. Everyone froze. Then Sergeant Derek Harlan stepped into the weak red light with both hands partially raised. He looked terrible. Rainwater soaked his uniform completely. His face was pale, exhausted, and streaked with sweat. Worse than that, he looked terrified in a way Mayo had never seen before. One of the agents immediately aimed at his chest. Don't move, Harlan ignored the gun entirely. His eyes locked onto Voss first. They got into the building faster than I thought. Voss's voice turned razor sharp. You expect us to believe you're helping now? Harlan took another careful step forward. You don't understand what Pike's people are trying to do. No, Voss snapped. What I understand is that you publicly assaulted an innocent woman and nearly destroyed this investigation. Harlan looked toward Maya. Then for a brief second, guilt crossed his face again, but fear crushed it almost immediately. Maya, he said quietly, they don't care about the evidence anymore. Maya folded her arms tightly against the cold. Then what do they care about? Harlan swallowed hard before answering. The recording inside the compartment wasn't the only copy. Silence hit the hallway. Voss stared at him. What are you talking about? Harlan looked over his shoulder toward the dark stairwell behind him like he expected armed men to appear any second. Salazar built a dead man's switch, he said quickly. If anything happened to him, copies of the recordings were supposed to go public automatically. Voss frowned. That didn't happen. Harlan nodded grimly. Because somebody intercepted the release system before it. Finished? Maya's stomach tightened. Who? Harlan looked directly at her now. Deputy Commissioner Pike. The emergency lights flickered again. Then gunshots exploded somewhere below them on the 8th floor. Closer than before. Everybody in the hallway flinched instinctively. One of the agents cursed under his breath. They're moving up. Harlan took another step toward Voss. Listen to me carefully. Pike thinks Maya knows where the missing recordings are. Maya stared at him in disbelief. I don't. I know that, Harlan replied immediately. But Pike won't believe it. Another burst of gunfire echoed upward through the stairwell. Then the sound of men shouting. Coming closer. Voss immediately turned toward her agents. We move now. But before anyone could react, the lights died completely again. And this time, the hallway did not come back on. Darkness swallowed the hallway so completely that for one terrifying second, Maya could hear nothing except breathing and distant gunfire somewhere below the building. Then, flashlights snapped on all at once. White beams sliced through the black corridor while agents shouted overlapping commands. Move. Cover the stairwell. Stay low. The sudden chaos echoed violently through the federal office floor. Maya instinctively stepped backward until her shoulder hit the wall. Agent Voss grabbed her arm immediately and pulled her forward through the darkness. This way, another burst of gunfire exploded from somewhere below the 8th floor staircase. Closer now. Much closer. Sergeant Derek Harlan moved beside Voss with surprising urgency. They're pushing up too fast. Pike must have brought private contractors. One of the agents swung his flashlight toward Harlan sharply. You don't get to? Act like one of us now. Harlan ignored him. The group moved quickly down the corridor while emergency alarms pulsed weakly. Overhead. Office doors stood open along both sides of the hallway like abandoned rooms after a hurricane. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Everything happening felt impossible. Just hours earlier, she had been arguing over car paperwork in a luxury showroom. Now, armed men were hunting her inside a federal building during a city-wide corruption collapse. Lang stumbled slightly behind them. Where are we even going? Voss answered without slowing down. Roof access. Harlan immediately shook his head. Bad idea. Voss turned sharply. You got a better one. Yes. Harlan pointed farther ahead through the darkness. There's an old records tunnel beneath the building connected to the original courthouse next block over. One of the agents frowned. Double quotes. How the hell do you know that? Harlan gave a hollow laugh. Because corrupt cops need escape routes. 2. Nobody liked the answer, but nobody ignored it either. The hallway lights flickered weakly for half a second before dying again. Somewhere behind them came the violent metallic crash of a stairwell door being forced open. Then, shouting, "They're on 9, move." The agents immediately formed tighter around Maya. Voss's voice sharpened. Run. The group broke into motion down the corridor. Maya's soaked shoes slapped against carpet while flashlight beams bounced wildly across walls and office glass. Lang struggled to keep up behind them, breathing heavily. Then gunfire erupted behind them inside the hallway. The sound exploded through the dark office floor like thunder. One federal agent near the rear shouted and dropped instantly behind an overturned desk while returning fire toward the corridor. Inner section. Go. He yelled. Voss grabbed Maya harder. Keep moving. Maya looked back only once. Dark figures were advancing through the hallway with tactical flashlights and body armor. Moving fast and disciplined, not random. Criminals. Professionals. Harlan cursed under his breath. Pike hired ex-military security. Another Agent fired twice down the hallway before retreating backward. Beside the group, the entire floor had become a battlefield. They reached a locked steel security door at the far end of the corridor. Voss swiped an access card. Red light. Denied. Damn it. Harlan stepped forward. Immediately. Move. He punched a code rapidly into the old keypad beside the frame. The lock clicked open. Voss stared at him briefly. How many contingency plans did your department build into this city? Harlan pushed the door open. Enough to survive people like Salazar. The group rushed through into a narrow archive corridor lined with old records, shelves, and concrete walls. The air smelled like dust, mildew, and forgotten paper. For the first time in several minutes, the gunfire behind them sounded farther away. Maya leaned briefly against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. Harlan looked at her directly. You need to understand something now. Voss immediately stepped between them, careful, but Harlan ignored her. His voice sounded strained and desperate. Pike believes Salazar trusted you. Maya stared at him in disbelief. That makes no sense. I never even met the man. You bought the Porsche. I bought a car. No, Harlan said grimly. You accidentally activated something. Silence settled heavily through the corridor. Voss narrowed her eyes. Explain. Harlan rubbed rainwater and sweat from his face. Salazar believed paranoia kept people alive. Every asset connected to his network had hidden triggers. Ownership transfers, access keys, financial signatures. Maya felt cold spread through her chest. The moment Maya legally claimed the Porsche, Harlan continued. The dead man's system recognized movement. Lang looked horrified. That's why federal servers got hit tonight. Harlan nodded slowly. And why Pike panicked? Voss's expression darkened. You're saying the sale itself triggered hidden releases. Partial releases, Harlan corrected. Enough to expose some names. Not all. Another distant gunshot echoed faintly through the building behind them. The agents tightened immediately. Maya looked toward Harlan carefully now. Then what's missing? Harlan hesitated. That hesitation frightened her more than the answer probably would. Finally, he spoke quietly. The master archive. Voss stared at him. Salazar kept more recordings. Harlan nodded once. Everything. Every payoff. Every meeting. Every politician. Every cop. Lang looked sick again. Where? Harlan slowly lifted his eyes toward Maya. That's the problem, he admitted. Pike thinks the Porsche transferred the archive key to her. Maya took a step backward instinctively. I don't have anything. I know, Harlan replied immediately. But Pike won't stop hunting you until he believes that too. The silence afterward felt unbearable. Then somewhere deeper inside the archive corridor, a phone suddenly started ringing. Everyone froze. An old desk phone mounted to the concrete wall near the record shelves buzzed loudly through the darkness. Once, twice, 3 times. Nobody moved. Then Harlan whispered something that made Maya's blood run cold. That line hasn't worked in 15 years. The old desk phone kept ringing through the dark archive corridor. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed unnaturally against the concrete walls and dusty records shelves, making the entire space feel colder than before. Nobody moved. One of the federal agents slowly raised his weapon toward the phone like it might explode. Harlan stared at it with genuine disbelief. That line was disconnected. When this building got renovated, the ringing continued. Maya felt every nerve in her body tightening. Somehow, the sound felt worse than the gunfire upstairs. Because Gunfire made sense. This did not. Voss stepped carefully toward the desk while flashlight beams trembled across stacks of old records boxes surrounding them. Don't touch it, Harlan warned immediately. Voss glanced back sharply. You think I'm taking instructions from you? I think salas are design traps inside traps. The phone rang again. Maya looked toward Harlan carefully. You sound like you knew him personally. Harlan gave a hollow smile. Nobody worked around that man without eventually feeling like they were trapped inside his head. The ringing stopped suddenly. Silence crashed over the corridor. Then the phone began ringing again almost instantly. This time slower, more deliberate. Voss exchanged a look with her agents before finally reaching for the receiver. The moment she lifted it, everyone held their breath. At first, there was only static. Then a calm male voice filled the corridor through the speaker loud enough for everyone to hear. If this line is active, the voice said smoothly, then Victor Salazar is dead. Maya felt cold rush through her chest. Even Harlan looked shaken. The voice continued. And if you are hearing this recording, it means the people I paid have finally started hunting each other. Voss slowly lowered herself beside the desk without taking her eyes off the phone. It was not live. It was another recording. Another dead man's message. Salazar's voice remained calm, almost amused. Fear makes powerful men predictable. Judges protect judges. Politicians protect careers. Police officers protect silence. A brief pause followed, but eventually someone panics. Harlan looked away toward the darkness between the record shelves. The voice continued again. If the archive key has transferred successfully, then the person carrying it is already in danger. Maya's pulse quickened. Voss looked toward her immediately. Then Salazar spoke the next sentence. The key cannot be stolen. It must be willingly given. The room went silent. Lang frowned. What the hell does that mean? Harlan answered quietly before anyone else could. The archive isn't physical. Everyone turned toward him. He rubbed both hands over his face slowly. Salazar never trusted hard drives completely. Too easy to seize, too easy to destroy. Voss narrowed her eyes. Then where's the archive? Harlan looked toward Maya again. In the ownership transfer. Maya stared at him in disbelief. You keep saying that like it means something. It does. Harlan swallowed hard. The Porsche sale triggered encrypted access through the beer identity. Voss's expression shifted instantly. Biometric authorization. Harlan nodded once. Salazar built the archive around legal ownership records tied to verified identity markers. Maya stepped backward slightly. No, absolutely not. You're telling me I somehow became connected to this just by buying a car. You became the activation point, Harlan admitted. The phone crackled again before Salazar's recorded voice returned. To the person carrying the key, he said calmly, understand something clearly. The archive exists because corruption survives inside darkness. If you choose silence, the machine survives with you trapped inside it. If you release everything, a faint laugh followed. Then God help everyone. The recording ended. Static filled the corridor again. Nobody spoke for several long seconds. Then somewhere above them came another distant burst of gunfire. Reality crashed back instantly. Voss stood quickly. We need extraction now. One of the agents moved toward the corridor entrance. The upper floors are compromised. Tactical teams are still trying to secure stairwell access. Harlan suddenly stepped forward, then stopped heading upward. Voss looked at him sharply. Harlan pointed deeper into the archive corridor. There's an underground tunnel behind these records rooms, leading toward the old courthouse transit garage. One of the agents frowned. You're sure? Harlan nodded. It was built during the Cold War for protected witness transfers. Maya almost laughed from exhaustion. The city really is one giant secret. No, Harlan replied quietly. It's generations of people protecting the wrong things. That sentence lingered heavily in the corridor. Voss motioned forward. Move. The group started deeper through the archive section while flashlight beams danced across decades of forgotten records and dust-covered shelves, as they walked. Maya moved closer beside Harlan. Why are you helping now? She asked quietly. Harlan didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, because I saw your face in that showroom after they laughed at you. Maya frowned slightly. Harlan kept walking without looking at her. I spent 20 years convincing myself corruption only hurt criminals and people already playing dirty. His voice lowered. Then I watched innocent people join in humiliating you because a cop told them you didn't belong beside something expensive. Maya looked ahead silently. Harlan gave a bitter smile. Funny thing about corruption. Eventually it teaches decent people how to become cruel, too. The words settled deep inside her because she knew he was right. The laughter in the showroom had not come from gangsters. It came from ordinary people. The group reached a massive rusted steel door at the end of the corridor. Harlan stepped forward and pulled a hidden lever beside the frame. Old gears groaned loudly inside the wall. Then the steel door slowly began sliding open. Cold underground air rushed out immediately. Dark tunnel, concrete walls, old railway tracks disappearing into blackness beneath the city. One of the agents stared ahead uneasily. You seriously expect us to walk through that? Before Harlan could answer, distant voices suddenly echoed from somewhere behind them in the archive corridor. They were getting closer. Voss immediately raised her weapon. Inside. Now, Maya stepped toward the tunnel entrance. Then every phone in the corridor vibrated simultaneously at once. Agents, Voss, Lang, Harlan, even Maya's. Emergency alert notification. Voss checked hers first. Then her face slowly drained of color. What happened? Maya asked. Voss looked up carefully. Deputy Commissioner Warren Pike us went live on national television. Silence filled the tunnel entrance. Then Voss quietly added the part that changed everything again. He's accusing you of being Victor Salazar's financial partner. Silence swallowed the underground tunnel entrance after Voss's words. He's accusing you of being Victor Salazar's financial partner. Rainwater dripped faintly from somewhere. Above the old concrete ceiling, while every phone screen in the corridor continued glowing with the same emergency news alert. Maya stared at Voss in disbelief. What? Voss handed her the phone. Without speaking. Deputy Commissioner Warren Pike filled the screen. Standing behind a podium crowded with microphones and flashing cameras. His gray suit looked immaculate. His voice sounded calm, controlled, trustworthy, exactly the kind of voice people believed. Tonight, Pike announced to the national press, federal authorities uncovered evidence connecting technology entrepreneur Maya Williams to financial operations tied to the late Victor Salazar. Maya felt something cold settle into her chest. Not fear. Recognition. This was what power looked like when it protected itself. Pike continued smoothly. While corruption within law enforcement is being investigated, we must not allow public sympathy to distract from the possibility that Miss Williams knowingly participated in sophisticated money laundering activities. Lane cursed quietly under his breath. Harlan looked physically sick. Maya kept staring at the screen, while Pike's polished face filled the tunnel entrance with lies. The same man probably watched the viral dealership footage hours ago and realized humiliation alone had failed to destroy her. So now he was trying something else. Narrative. Voss took the phone back. He's moving early because he's losing control. No, Maya said quietly. He's moving early because people will believe him. Nobody argued, because everyone standing there understood the same ugly truth. A decorated deputy commissioner in a tailored suit looked more believable to America than a bleeding black woman dragged from a Porsche showroom. Harlan rubbed both hands across his face. Pike scared. Voss shot him a cold glance. You don't get points for recognizing monsters after helping them feed. The words landed hard. Harlan accepted them without defending himself. Voices echoed again somewhere behind the archive corridor. Closer now. The agents immediately tightened formation. Voss lowered her voice. Tunnel. Move. The group stepped inside the old underground passage while the rusted steel door groaned shut behind them. Darkness swallowed the corridor almost instantly, except for flashlight beams cutting through damp concrete and abandoned rail tracks disappearing beneath downtown Atlanta. The tunnel smelled like rust, wet stone, and forgotten decades. Maya walked silently between Voss and Lang while Harlan led them deeper through the darkness. You really think Pike ordered all this? Lang asked quietly. Harlan laughed bitterly ahead of them. Men like Pike never order things directly. They create fear and let desperate people volunteer. The tunnel curved slightly downward beneath the city. Far above them, thunder rolled again across Atlanta. Voss's phone buzzed repeatedly now with incoming alerts. National media picked up Pike's statement, she muttered. Half the networks are already running his version. Maya exhaled slowly. Just hours ago, strangers in a luxury showroom laughed because they thought she was stealing a car. Now, millions more were being told she was part of a criminal empire. The speed of it almost felt unreal. Then Harlan suddenly stopped walking. Everyone froze. Ahead, faint light glowed at the far end of the tunnel. Vehicle headlights. Voss raised her weapon instantly. Who's there? A voice echoed back calmly through the darkness. Federal extraction team. Nobody relaxed. Harlan looked suspicious immediately. Mr. I know. The agents slowly moved forward with weapons raised until the tunnel widened into an old underground transit platform hidden beneath the courthouse district. 3 black SUVs waited near the tracks. But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too clean. Voss stepped in front of Maya. Identify yourselves. One of the men near the SUVs held up credentials. U.S. Marshals Service. We're here for the witness. Harlan looked at the credentials only briefly before shaking his head sharply. No, the man frowned. Excuse me. Harlan stepped forward into the flashlight glow. Those badges are old issue. Everything changed instantly. The fake marshal closest to the SUV reached inside his jacket. Federal agents raised weapons. Immediately, don't. Gunfire exploded through the underground platform. The deafening sound ricocheted violently off concrete walls while everyone scattered for cover behind pillars and abandoned maintenance crates. Maya dropped beside Lang, behind an old steel barrier as bullets sparked against concrete. Nearby. Voss fired twice while shouting commands over the chaos. The fake marshals retreated toward the SUVs, firing as they moved. Harlan grabbed Maya's arm. Suddenly, this way. She almost pulled away instinctively. Then, she saw something that froze her completely. One of the attackers had stopped shooting. He was staring directly at Maya, not trying to kill her. Recognizing her, the man slowly lowered his weapon. Then he shouted something across the platform that cut through the gunfire like a blade. She doesn't have the archive. Everything stopped for half a Second, even Voss looked up sharply. The man pointed toward Harlan and said, "He does." Silence crashed through the underground tunnel. Maya turned toward Harlan. Slowly, the former sergeant stood frozen beside her. Rainwater and sweat mixed across his face beneath the flashlight beams. Then Maya finally understood the last missing piece. All night, Harlan had acted terrified of the Porsche, not because Maya activated the archive, because he already had it. Harlan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the fight had drained out of him completely. Voss's voice turned deadly calm. "Derek." Harlan looked toward Maya instead. "You want to know why I panicked when you touched that car?" he asked quietly. Maya said nothing. Harlan slowly reached inside his soaked uniform, jacket. Every weapon in the tunnel instantly aimed toward him, but Harlan didn't pull a gun. He pulled a small, black data drive no larger than a house. Key, the master archive. Maya stared at it in disbelief. Harlan gave a tired smile that looked closer to surrender than relief. "Salazar gave it to me years earlier, in case the network collapsed." His voice cracked slightly. "I told myself I kept it for survival." Voss stepped closer carefully. "And now?" Harlan looked around the dark tunnel filled with guns, fear, and collapsing lies. Then he looked back at Maya. "Now, I think I kept it because deep down," he swallowed hard, "I wanted somebody brave enough to finally end this." The tunnel fell silent except for distant thunder above the city. Slowly, Harlan held the drive out toward Maya Williams, the same woman he had humiliated, handcuffed, and tried to destroy inside a luxury showroom only hours earlier. "You were right," he said quietly. "The law never belonged to me." Maya stared at the drive in his shaking hand while news alerts continued exploding across every phone in America. Then, slowly, she reached forward and took it. This story reminds us that prejudice often speaks louder than truth, especially when power feels threatened. Maya Williams was judged the moment people saw her standing beside something they believed she did not deserve. The real danger in the story was not only corruption inside law enforcement, but how quickly ordinary people joined the humiliation without knowing the truth. The story shows that injustice survives when silence becomes easier than courage and when appearances matter more than character. In the end, Maya's strength did not come from wealth, status, or revenge. It came from refusing to break while the world tried to define her through fear and suspicion. The message for the audience is clear. Dignity should never depend on race, appearance, or social class, and real justice only begins when people are brave enough to confront uncomfortable truths instead of hiding behind power, assumptions, and silence. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, I would truly love to hear your thoughts on the storytelling, the emotional pacing, or whatever stayed with you after listening. Every comment you share helps make the next stories more honest, moving, and meaningful. And if you have a powerful or meaningful story of your own, please do not hesitate to send it to the channel. It may become the next story to touch and inspire thousands of others. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration.